I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco and across the moat from Oakland, at the 420 studio down by the lagoon, as Archie Bunker would have said had he lived, and had he visited our fair town of Alameda, where everything on one level or another is down by the lagoon. And I'm happy to be here. It's a beautiful day. Spring has sprung in Northern California, and our rainy season has come to an end. It's still a little brisk, but I'm not complaining. If I think of all the weather in mid-America this year, it's been absolutely horrible. And so this is a great diversion from all of that for me. I get to speak to some of the most interesting people on the planet on a regular basis on this podcast. I'm grateful. Today is no exception. I have not one but two interesting returnees, both Renaissance men in their own rights. First, let me start with my old buddy Jerry Feitelberg, who is in tune with all of the good things about being retired. Jerry is a retired pharmacist, successful business in Alameda. Not only that, was the pharmacist of the year in all of California, 1995, I think it was. And welcome back, Jerry.
Well, thank you, Ralph. It's great to be with you, and
Okay.
it's great to have a home in Alameda where we don't have the traffic in the city of Alameda, but when we go out onto either the 880 or come down to the peninsula, the traffic. Silicon Valley is too successful.
Yeah, it's nice. We're also joined today, Jerry, another return guest. You and he have been on these airwaves together a number of times, and it's a great combination. I'd like to welcome Mitchell Belacone back to the airwaves from Argentina. How are you, sir?
Doing fine, and hoping maybe Jerry can get the Silicon Valley to lend some of their success to Buenos Aires and Argentina. They're having just one more financial crisis, as they have every 10, 15 years scheduled.
John,
Yeah.
I've never asked you this. Do all the Nazis that went to Argentina, did their grandkids get together for some sort of reunion? or?
Well, to tell you the truth, it wouldn't surprise me, because there are communities in the South that have them. And matter of fact, one of my neighbors, he's a pretty old guy. I would guess he's up in his 80s, but his father was the ambassador to Germany at the time of World War II. That could be translated to a travel agent, looking at it from one perspective.
Oh, yes. And looking at it from a realistic perspective, ... But would you, all through Europe, and I'll be serious for a second because I happen to be Jewish. I know Jerry is as well. And I have a feeling
Likewise.
you ought too. We never talked about that. There's more than just an undercurrent of anti-Semitism going on in Europe, in all over mid-America, wherever you look. Has that carried down to Argentina, as it were?
I never see it. I've never seen a hint of it. They're a pretty warm and welcoming people altogether, and friendly. I mean, there's undercurrents of everything everywhere, but you don't get the swastikas painted around very often. It's a rare occurrence. A top rabbi, got beat up the other day, but I think it was more. It made the news. It was more of a robbery. Of course, they've the history of anti-Jewish attacks here, but the one, I think it was in 98 or something, that was all done by the Iranians. But you've had successive presidents cover it up for a price. With when they bombed out the cultural center and they bombed out the cultural center here. And I think there was 100 and something people that died. But it's not a prevalent thing. It's not on the increase like you would read about in France or in Paris or.
Yeah.
Well, we had the synagogue, the Trio Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, where 11 people were gunned down just last year, and we're seeing more and more incidents. The United States is a huge country, and in some areas there are small Jewish populations. In some areas of the Midwest, there aren't any Jewish populations. So when there are Jews in there, sometimes they do get attacked for being Jewish, and it's a sad situation. But we're seeing anti-Semitism on the rise. We're seeing it in the Congress, where they have two Muslim women that were elected to the House of Representatives, and they made their feelings known about the Jewish people. So it's around us. It's always been around us.
The President of the United States comes out with rhetoric that is so outrageous that Democrats hate the Jews.
Yeah, that was insane. 70% of the Jews vote for the Democrats. Come on.
Right.
If I can jump in for a second with the Pittsburgh attack, what really struck me funny about that, if you go through history, there was a unnamed at this point, research scientist that worked in a subpar basement in Pittsburgh on a cure for polio. And he academically, he rated better than the lab he had in his work, but it was pretty well known to be anti-Semitism that landed him in this basement laboratory. Well, he worked night and day for a couple of years, and he came up with a cure for polio. And he was advised, if you hold out while your patent goes through, you'll be a multimillionaire. And he chose, and his words were, I can't, this belongs to the people. And he didn't want to see however many 1,000 people become crippled or die in the time he was holding out for money. So he simply gave it away. That was Jonas Salk. So it really kills me that the simpletons and the anti-Semites that are basically just jealous, no-brain losers that have to jump onto something to justify their hate, that they picked Pittsburgh to do it in light of the history of Jonas Salk.
Yes, that's called irony.
Thank you.
Right. And it's amazing how the lower the IQ, the more prone to hatred. And to be caught up in a rally, I started to say that Trump, who made that allegation about the Democrats, is the one who said that during a neo-Nazi rally, he said there are good people on both sides.
There were fine people on both sides of Charlottesville. He was saying that the thugs and people who would commit bodily harm to people were fine people.
And I worry if even 45% of the populace votes for this guy, that means that almost half the people you see on a regular basis really think this guy is special. And even if he ends up getting jobs back, at what price glory? He's fucking up the air. He's messing up the water. It's just horrible. He thinks that too much carbon monoxide is good because the world thrives on carbon monoxide. He refuses to look at a scientist. He doesn't take the advice of people in the Pentagon before making military decisions. It's really scary, and I don't know what to say. I just every day you think, well, is it going to end? Is he going to just resign? Are they going to come to him with overwhelming evidence? On the other hand, I'm uplifted today about Congress's decision, and it's almost bipartisan, 420 to nothing, that they're gonna get the Mueller report released to the public some way, somehow, and let them go through it and take out the redacted parts. Redact parts about people under investigation. Don't embarrass people. But the rest of us, we need to know one way or the other as a country to have closure.
I agree with you, Ralph. I also agree with Nancy Pelosi that this is not the time for impeachment to go after Trump. This being so close to the 20 months to the election. And if this were to come out, I think that his supporters would get enraged and they would go out and support him, and he may be viewed as a martyr, and they would get out their vote and they'd get the people to win the election. You got to remember, I think how many votes were cast the last time? About 130 million. And how many people didn't vote? What scares me is that maybe 100 million people didn't vote. So the right wing knows that if they get close to 20 or 25%, of the people that vote, the total number of people that vote, they can win the election with a minority vote, which they did last time.
Yeah, and let me just vehemently disagree with you about Pelosi. The same Pelosi that had a chance to come after Bush for war crimes and impeach him, and she led up on that. Who are you going to disturb? You're worrying about disturbing the status quo? And if there's an election and it comes down to a centrist Democrat running against Trump, anybody but somebody who's radical to the left, a Bernie, whoever you're going to pick, if they pick a centrist, Trump will kick their ass. No question about it.
You got to remember, they need 67 votes in the Senate to get Trump convicted. They can impeach him, but they can't. They won't convict him. They got 12.
You can impeach him, and how is that going to look for his reelection status?
It might energize his base.
Oh, I don't think so. When the Mueller report comes out, if there's enough to impeach him,
well, that's different. If there's enough in the New York investigations in the Southern District of New York for the Justice Department, if there is stuff coming out about obstruction of justice and bank fraud, insurance fraud, and whatever else he's doing,
that stuff doesn't matter, because unless he rapes a baby on Fifth Avenue, high noon, he's not going to get impeached on anything but obstruction of justice. They won't get him on collusion. There's too much of a cover-up. I'm sure that they won't get him on collusion with the Russians. The Russians have too much to lose, so they'll cover stuff up. But they can get him on the simple fact that if they bring it out, he wanted Comey fired because Comey was, all of that.
Yeah, Comey was a threat.
To obstruct justice, so Mueller and all that. And it's just pure and simple. And if you try to impede a witness from testifying, and they've got good evidence for that. They've got the checks, the documentation that the son of a bitch took money or paid money to, what's her name?
Oh, to Stormy Daniels?
Stormy Daniels. And they have on tape that he denies doing so. And it was done with election fraud, so that there's enough to impeach him. I don't know where she's coming from to say something like that, but it certainly serves to split the party, and that's what Trump's looking for.
Well, I'm not so sure a simple impeachment is going to split the Republicans. Obviously, the Democrats need something to do that, to back the Republicans off.
They need a lot of indictment. They need an indictment.
Right.
Crime.
They need a lot of damning evidence to get that done, because so far to date, no matter what he's done, they're doing their best to keep their jobs.
You know
they don't care what he does as long as they stay in their little jobs.
That's true. The
did?
voting pub. That's why I say he could very easily be elected if given the chance. That's why you've got to come up with this evidence. Even if you don't convict them, you just throw things out there where these people have to say. And the Republicans have to be reelected sometime. They're going to have to face their constituents.
Most of their constituents hate the Democrats so much, and they're so opposed to it. It really doesn't matter. They figure that they're both corrupt in some way, and at least these people represent them, which I don't know why they think that when they really don't. But everybody was saying that there's no way he's going to get elected, no way to get elected, and lo and behold, he did. Now that he's entrenched, I think it's going to be harder for him to lose this time around.
Yeah, and you got Fox News, the propaganda machine for the Republican Party, or Trump TV, if you want to call it. And you got people like Laura Ingraham and Jeanine Pirro and Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity spewing out hate. You got to hate the Democrats. They're terrible. And these people really hate the Democrats. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe it. And it goes 24/7 all day long. And Fox News is just keep on getting away with it.
Not in defense of them, but to even things out, I have to admit CNN is slanted as well.
In what way? Do you think that they slanted to the liberals? What about MSNBC? They too, they may be slanted more to the Democrats, but they at least present facts. They don't make up news like they do at
CNN
Fox.
doesn't make up news, but they are. They seem to be pro-Democrat, but maybe that's because.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying they seem to be pro-Democrat because maybe that's because I'm pro-Democrat. I feel that way.
But they'll jump to conclusion.
Do you remember when they had the fairness doctrine? When they used to have when you had an interview with a Republican, you'd have a Democrat on. So a Democrat would get 10 minutes, a Republican would get 10 minutes. That doesn't exist anymore. And that's why Fox News has succeeded, because they go Republican 24/7, all day long. And at least the other two cable news networks at least try to present facts when they went out there and report the news.
I agree with that, but I keep in mind that CNN will jump to conclusions and slant itself to the left, as for instance is with the kid with the MAGA hat and the Indian that came up to him. That kid's got a suit that he might win against CNN. They jumped to conclusions there.
Yeah.
They put out one side of the story that had nothing to do with the real story. So, but there's no comparison between what CNN does and what Fox. That being said, there's no comparison between them and Fox. Fox is just plain and simple beating a drum for Trump.
Yeah, you got a president who made a simple mistake last week, and when he was having the conference with Tim Cook from Apple, and he called him Tim Apple, and he couldn't even say, "Hey, I had a brain fart. No big deal. I meant to call him Tim Cook, and I called him Tim Apple. It was just
he denied making the mistake. He denied saying it, and I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah.
How could people take him seriously when he lies on the average of 11 times a day? That's crazy. And what's even crazier is that the news even covers it. You know, give him 5 minutes a day of cursory coverage. The president babbled about something. He said 12 things, 11 of them were lies, and can't wait for election time. But
that's
homage.
another thing. That's another thing, Ralph, and that's why the lawyers, when Mueller should have had Trump come and testify in front of Mueller's investigators, but they didn't want him talking to them, so they sent out a series of questions that he had written responses to, and that meant that prevented the investigators from doing the follow-up questions that they normally would do when they do in an interview with someone. Just like that's how Clinton ran into trouble. And we got that stupid statement. What is the definition of is?
Is,
you know,
yes.
That years ago, and so they thought that would be a perjury trap for him, and they didn't let him do it. And that's one of the flaws in the Mueller investigation. And because he can't be indicted for lying because he didn't testify to them, didn't raise his hand.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. You know, a simple thing would have been, hey, tell him not to lie.
Yeah, right.
I think Donald Trump read my book, and I'll tell you why. I have a quote within my new book of short stories. Look how I can sneak a plug in there. But
actually,
no.
we were going to get to it, but you missed the segue.
Watch this segue. Lying should be accepted as a virtue and liars admired. We should think of lies as nothing worse than non-chemical mood elevators. If the truth is not acceptable or isn't working, simply don't accept it or use it. If there were no truth to start with, then there would be no need to fight over everybody's self-interested interpretation of the supposed one almighty goal. Yeah, I wouldn't take me too seriously when I wrote that, but it was written in a completely different facetious context. But maybe he read it and took the literal interpretation.
Well, maybe he colored a book. Is more likely than having read a book.
But if you're in a court of law and you lie to the judge in your testimony and they catch you in a lie, the judge will ask, why should I believe you? Are you lying now or did you lie then? And I don't know what's true. And what is the truth? And that's why it's so important for them to tell the truth. So, and anyone that watches Judge Judy, she says if you tell the truth, you don't need a good memory, because you're going to tell the truth and it's going to be the same no matter what it is. Whereas if you tell a lie, you got to remember what you said.
Well, that's why I choose to lie, because it keeps my memory sharp. Because if I told the truth, it's just a boring this or that. If I tell somebody one thing and the other person another, I stay on top of my game trying to remember which story I gave everybody else.
Got it.
Whoa. You give yourself a little challenge every day. You push it to the limit.
I think they're going to get this guy when he leaves office. There's the part I don't get about this guy. I mean, every now and then I've done something a little bit like I'm worried, was that kosher or not? And then I obsess and worry about it a little bit. I'm not talking from a guilt or a moral standpoint, but I just wonder how this guy sleeps with all that's coming in his direction. Doesn't seem to faze him. I guess he's bought his way out of so many suits and so many situations that he thinks he can keep going forever this way. He's going to have a lineup of. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just doesn't help when they play Hail to the Chief when the guy comes in. It almost encourages him, and he has gotten away with everything, and he hasn't ever been held accountable, and he just has no human compassion. That's what really gets
no empathy whatsoever.
No.
None whatsoever.
If there were
some presidents, I mean, he was twiddling his thumbs at the Bushes, sitting there at the Bush's funeral. He looked like he'd you got 4 or 5 somber former presidents and their wives and sitting there, and he's like the little boy in 4th grade that the teacher says, "Hey, you got to sit back there and with your back to the class, face the wall." If ever the
cliche, the truth is stranger than fiction, it's this guy's presidency. Who could think up all this craziness?
Could you have written anything like this? Who would have it taken?
No. Nobody believe a word of one of these situations that he puts us in.
Right.
Well, a couple of things. When you said "hail to the chief," you misspoke. You meant "hail to the thief." That's the way it should be played. Hail to the thief. And the other thing is, now with this scandal about the parents paying bribes to the universities to get their kids in, stop and think. Trump didn't want Cohen, when he gave his testimony, said they sent letters out to his high school, to Fordham University, to wherever, to the University of Pennsylvania, where he went to Wharton School, not to release his grades. And now they're questioning how he got into Wharton. He started at Fordham and then transferred in, but Papa Trump, Fred Trump, made a sizable donation to the University of Pennsylvania, and now this is 50 years ago or whatever it was, and the admissions director is probably dead by now, but we never would know whether or not he bought his way into the University of Pennsylvania.
Well, I think it's a given that
others, it's not.
Yeah. It's a given that people that donated buildings and this would get their kids in, legacy and things like that. But the fraudulent nature of the latest ones in the news are ridiculous, with the athletic directors saying that they were prospects for the football team, and then they find out they've never played football and they weigh 145 pounds and taking tests for other people. That's taking it to a whole nother level.
On real athletes, imposing faces, because these kids had never been in a football uniform.
Yeah, they photoshopped it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Wow. What a world. So, Mitchell, tell us about your book. Tell us how it came to be. It's your second book. Your first one, Broadway Joe. Broadway
Jose.
Yes.
Broadway Jose. Well, this book came to be, it's actually the third book. The first one was 2 dramas on my way to hell, but it was also a collection of short stories, and it had some in there that weren't so great. So I wrote another 5 or 6 and took the best of that book and put it in this book and hopefully do a better job with it. And it's called Bud's Nose and Other Less Canine Stories. I mean, if it went through a regular publisher, it probably wouldn't go anywhere because the stories are too diverse. They normally like to stay within one theme. Bud's Nose is the title story is a love story between a man, a woman, and his dog. this time I'm prepared for you if you let me read a few quotes.
Please.
From the title story. May I?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch it. Bud had spent time in doggy jail. I had heard the charges were for vagrancy as he had been caught roaming around the College of Charleston campus. As Bud was more intelligent than any dog that I had ever met, perhaps it was truancy that he served his time for. So much for his Dickensian start to life. Another one. That third night, he crawled from the foot of the bed like a soldier in the grass to push his nose into my armpit. He then moved from there to give me a kiss on the mouth. I wasn't too keen on the order he chose for his affections, but I've had girlfriends challenge me even further in the order of things before a kiss.
And Bud's Nose is available on Amazon right now. I'm looking at it.
Yes.
You can get on Kindle and in paperback.
Thank
Not
you.
bad.
I'll give you two more. Go ahead.
No, not
I'll
bad.
give you two more quote. I'm sorry, I'm bad at this. You were saying, Jerry, I'm sorry.
No,
the Hounds on the low.
You can get it on paperback from $9.99 from Prime, Amazon Prime.
Mitchell, he's pitching your book. Let him go.
I'm letting him go. I'm new to radio. I butt in. I'm bad at it, but I'll give you two more.
We're all
quotes.
new to radio. We're doing great. Mitchell, give us another quote or two.
Two more. The hounds on the lower end of the leashes were all the more spirited to have a night their coats were bred for. As if trained to do so, they spotted a woman seated on that bench. I thought with a smirk, earn your Alpo, bitches. As time went on, Bud and Rosie became more competitive for the work, and the paper would come back to me in two sections. By that, I don't mean to infer that Bud would retrieve the sports and Rosie the classifieds. I had to keep a good grasp on one of their collars each morning to keep the work schedule and the newspaper intact.
Well, fitting the Jerry's dogs barking in the background.
Yeah, you can hear them.
What kind of dogs do you have, Jerry?
We have two of them. We have a little 10 or 11 pound Chiweenie. He's a mixture of Chihuahua and Dachshund, and he thinks he's a 500-pound dog. He's fearless. And the
little guys are always that way.
Yeah, and the other one's about a 15-pound mix of the Papillon breed, and Whippet. She has very long legs, but has great coloring and great disposition. Little separation anxiety, but she's very good too. Very defensive of the house. So they're good.
And
One's
she can
10
run.
And the other one's 4. Yeah.
She can run circles around the other dog with the Whippet blood. I suspect.
Oh yeah. Oh, then the little Chiweenie. Oh yeah, but he can move pretty fast too for a little guy.
Yeah, Whippets are a great
but they're
breed.
Great.
They're pretty much odorless, if I'm not mistaken. Whippets.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're great. She's a great dog. Yeah, they're great pets. They're both rescues. The first one, the female that we got, we were over at a friend's house having dinner with them, and Isla was sitting there holding the dog on her lap, and the lady that owned her had a Norwich Terrier, and they went to the pound or the rescue shelter, and they got, the dog's name is Gidget, and they got Gidget, and they thought that would keep the male happy. Well, every time that the owner went to touch the female, the male went insane, and it just caused chaos. So Isla said, well, if you ever think of giving her up, I'll take her. 8 o'clock the next morning, the phone rang, and we've had her for ever since. And the little one that we got, Isla's daughter lives a couple miles from here, and she was out walking her dog, and she sees this little, he was about 6 months old at the time, and he's running around the neighborhood. And she tried to catch him, and he ran away. And, she figured he just got out and would go home. A few minutes later, she spotted him again, and then a neighbor helped catch him. and he had a collar on, but he didn't have a tag, and then they found out he didn't have a chip. And they advertised for the dogs at the rescue shelter, and they advertised in the local next door. All the neighbors got information that they had found the dog, and no one responded. And we got him, and that was 4 years ago in March of 2015. And he's been with us ever since. Yeah, we enjoyed
it. It's unusual in this day and age that the dog had no chip.
No tags and no chip.
Yeah, wow. You're the lucky ones, and actually the dog is the lucky ones.
Well, they don't have to put up with the news about Trump every day, that's for sure.
That's true. Well,
I think we're the lucky ones to be able to have them.
Yes, we are.
Oh, yes.
Just a couple other things, Ralph. 2 weeks from today is March 28th. And that will be opening day at the Oakland Coliseum as the Oakland A's take on the Los Angeles Angels at 1 p.m. And I will be there for the game.
Wow. Nice.
Nice. Also on March 22nd, which is a week from tomorrow, I will be listening to the aforementioned James Comey, who will be giving a lecture at the Flint Center at De Anza College in Cupertino. I think we're going to have a full house for that one.
I bet you will.
So you'll have a report of what he has to say and bring it back to us.
You got it. It should be interesting with everything that's going on. We'll get him.
Okay, let me ask you this. Your book is printed. I'm going to ask, before we close, I'm going to ask Mitchell, his book is printed. Is there anything in the book that you wish you hadn't put in, looking back? And is there anything in the book that you wish you had put in, and any regrets along those lines?
I can't read it without wanting to change something. And you just get to the point where you have to say enough is enough and let it be. And it's never going to be perfect, and it's just going to be the best at that moment when you release it. The one good thing about it on an Amazon, if I pick up a little typo, which I shouldn't at this point, or I pick up something that was worded the wrong way, you can go back and change it. And one more little plug without sticking another quote on you. When it came out, it sold enough. Now that the short stories were diverse. There's one boxing story in there that takes place in the early 80s, and there's one mixed martial arts street fight story that's in there. When it came out, it was the number one. I put it in the category of boxing amongst other categories. And when it came out, for about 2 weeks, it was the number one new release in the boxing category. So,
wow.
But that statistics can lie a little bit. It didn't sell that many books, but I guess for the 2 weeks where boxing books were coming out, that was the best-selling one of maybe 3 or 4, and it was only one boxing story in it.
Mitchell, what's the old expression that statistics never lie, but statisticians do?
I never heard that, but
sounds good to me.
That could be used here.
Okay, all right, it happens. You guys are terrific. I thank you for another fine edition of Comfortably Zoned with the Zig Zag Man on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We are grateful. I know the audience is grateful. Great response when you guys are on. I ask you if you'll please come back again and do it again.
Sounds good to me.
Anytime.
Beautiful.
I love listening to the both of you. Even if you didn't invite me, I tune in to listen to both you guys.
Oh, that's a high compliment, and the check is in the mail.
Yeah, sometimes we even talk baseball.
Yeah, and of course we do. But not exclusively, and that's the nice part too. So we'll do it next time, and I thank you, everyone, for listening. Let me remind you, keep your dreams wet and your humor dry, and your kids off the laps of clerics that wear dresses. And if you could do all three things, even 2 out of 3 is not a bad in today's day and age. It's good, and if you keep working on it, we get you to do all 3. That'd be great. Have a terrific day. Thank you guys both, and again, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank both of you guys.
Bye-bye, guys.
Ciao.